Welcome to episode 4 of the Fitness and Football podcast. We are here with Jordan and Pedro, who is you're from Brazil, aren't you?
Correct, yeah, from Brazil.
Yeah, so you're a coach in the USA, is that correct?
Yeah, I coach and I also work with, soccer. It's basically 24/7. So I do business development management for a micro sports complex in Detroit, Michigan. And I also coach for a small club where I live.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what is it when you say what's a business development manager, did you say that?
Yeah, so
you run the facility?
No, not really. So I'm responsible for, community engagement and finding new partners and investors for our business, which is basically like a startup. And Detroit itself, the city, within the city, soccer is not very popular.
Right.
It is, but it's more like on a recreational level.
Yeah.
So we're trying to bring, because on the outskirts of the city, the suburbs, soccer is huge. Like you have lots of teams. But in those areas, people are able to afford more of that select type of soccer. And in Detroit,
it's all community.
Different.
It's all community based, pretty much.
Yeah, it's more in that rec level, because kids, they have a lot of like companies and places that they do basketball and football because a lot of the companies, they just like put money on it. But then soccer is still like crawling when it comes to that. So we're trying to be the pioneers and bring that to everybody.
Yeah, because sport works a slightly different way. I don't know if you know much about sport in England, but it works differently over there, doesn't it? Because someone told us, it was the other day we were speaking about it actually, in that like the communities actually invest money to like high school and college teams to sort of like keep money in the community sort of thing. So basically, like there was a American football game, got 11,000 people to it. I think it was like before lockdown or something like that, and that's just a high school football game. So like they get quite a big support from an early age, compared to here where you won't be in front of a crowd until you get to senior level. So is that why? Is it to keep sort of like to sort of invest in the youth from the community? Is that what they're doing, like giving back? So they're going to watch sort of like college games and stuff like that as part of like them investing in the future?
I think it's also like a bit of like a culture thing. I don't know how are things in England, but here it's normally both parents work, and then you have to drive places everywhere you go. It's super far. And people are busy, they eat in their cars, so it's kind of like, in my perspective as an outsider, is that they're always trying to find ways to kind of fill the gaps in their schedule. And they put kids, they don't stay home, they go from one sport to the next sport to the next sport. They play hockey, they play lacrosse, they play soccer, they play football. They just the season just changes. I think it's more of a cultural thing than,
Well, mate, 100%. Obviously, that's how me and Pedro met, was in America and Colorado. And I bet you can see yourself, every kid that you went to the host family, they all played 4 sports. Yeah. Not just in England, for us, Pedro, like our sport normally is football. Like we didn't really play like many more than 2 sports if you're growing up. But in America, it's like they play like 4 or 5 sports, and they go summer camps, and every week they have different sports and in different weeks. So it's crazy.
Yeah. And you would talk to kids in camps, and they would be like, "Yeah, coach, I'm done with this camp, which is 5 hours long, and I'm going to like a lacrosse camp." I'm like, how do you have the energy to go from so
do you think in your opinion, is that, it's probably a little bit controversial this, but obviously this standard of football in England is the best in the world. The Premier League's pretty much the best league in the world. Do you think that's why there's such a difference in quality in terms of what you would say soccer? So like, for example, because the kids aren't specialized and focused on that one sport until a certain age.
Yeah. No, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to agree, because you have four different sports. It doesn't matter how talented the kid is, but you're still dividing all your talent and all your skills to these all different sports. And especially when you're that young, it's hard for you to kind of like separate. Oh, this I use in basketball, this I use in football. No, you're forming your character, you're forming your body structure. So everything that you do at that time is going to influence that.
Yeah.
So I feel like if you're doing four different sports, that move, that spin that you do at basketball, you're gonna try and do the same in soccer. So yeah, and it's the same in Brazil. Brazil, you could tell the players that come from Brazil that go to the Premier League, those guys, they played soccer since they're 6.
Yeah, it's literally their life, isn't it?
Yeah. So and it's and a lot of, and one thing that I had to mention about here is that kids, and because they the distance, they don't live that close to each other, they don't have that, they don't normally hang out as much, they don't have that, they play, and then they go back to their house, and they don't really go out to play in their backyards to for hours,
Yeah.
with their friends. It's summertime, which would be the time that they would have that time, that time to just go play. They are in summer camps. So, they're always doing something. That's not like, oh, I'm just going to go out and play and come back. Your mom has to go find you somewhere, because you've been out. So,
well, that was the same as me growing up. I mean, we used to play summer holidays. We'd go out 8 in the morning till 8 at night. And even on a weekday in school time, I don't know about you, Pedro, when you grew up in Brazil, but we used to play football from after school till we get called in by a mom shouting 8 o'clock at night. But was that the same as you growing up when you were in Brazil? Was it the same sort?
Yeah. And my mom, summertime, the only thing that would stop the game would be, cars, and then the kites, because kites are very popular in Brazil. So, if they're like, there's a kite battle or whatever, and one of them was like cut and it would fly across the field, 90% of the boys would just take off to go, try and get that flight, the kite. But other than that, it would just be like hours, So
that's it, like.
Yeah.
So, but it's not even then. It's like it is like similar summers to what, because we brought up in the same area. Like it's not just like going out and playing. It was football for 8 hours. It wasn't like going out and doing something and then maybe kick a ball about and then going to doing something else. It was just football for 8 hours, and I think that's like a lot of the culture in our country is that like we are football mad. So that is literally, as a kid, what say like 70% of people my age were doing. Whereas it seems like abroad, like in like the US, for example, it's very like broad what they'll be doing. They'll be sort of like going and playing basketball, and then they'll be on a boat in a lake somewhere. It seems like a lot broader what they're doing.
Very structured, just very like this. So it's all in the block. But I think when you're a kid, I don't know, you pick up your best skills on the street and just through like kicking the ball off a curb, because it pops up differently, like, and it can happen in a game. So it's but how was your brought up? Like, how you brought up? Was it street football? Was it on the beach? Or how was yours, Pedro? How was you growing up?
So mine, actually my dad, he was a professional soccer player. So he made it to pro in Brazil,
Nice.
played for some big teams there. So when I was of age, I would just go with, I would go with him because he was already retired from, playing, but he was still coaching. So I would go, to where he would coach and just like spend, a lot of time with him and just working the ball. And then the fields, no grass, it's just,
wow.
Just beaten
What
up.
was it like, concrete or just like mud or?
No, it was just mud. So yeah,
Was it
some were muddy, some were sandy. So it was mostly, grass would be on the very corners, but the center would always be like just mud. I would play in the streets, with my, neighbors, cousins, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
And then also with that, I would also play field soccer and futsal. Field and futsal were the ones that had the, the nice facilities, you would find grass, not the amazing grass that we're used to seeing like in TV, but decent from playing on the mud or concrete to playing
on the concrete.
Futsal is one of them ones. But futsal now is actually getting bigger in the UK. There's futsal teams, especially Manchester, is getting big now. But I feel as though futsal made Brazil who they are, as in it's so technical.
Yeah, it's so skillful as well, isn't it?
It is, mate. You've got to be so fast for your feet, and I think like when you combine that with 11-a-side, you could definitely use it as an advantage if you play futsal, which I think Brazil obviously did it for years. They were ahead of the curve, weren't they? So
yeah, and I think it's like a structure. You start with futsal, and then you move on to like playing field soccer after you turn a little bit older.
Okay.
So all these players start with myself. I started. I'm not trying to compare myself, but I'm saying we all kind of did the same. Neymar, Robinho, Ronaldo, Ronaldinho. They all started futsal.
They all came from futsal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think stuff like that as well, though. It's like it improves it quicker than what like your standard, like, right, just go into an 11-a-side game or whatever, because it's such a fast pace. It's just, I believe it's a smaller football as well that you use.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, all these little tweaks, it sort of shoots you up in the rankings quicker. Because then, once you get to a full-size ball and you've got loads of space on a football pitch, it's just, it's so much easier to play, rather than just being thrown on an 11-a-side pitch. I think because I know Peter Schmeichel as well. He was a handball goalkeeper, so it made him an amazing shot stopper, because again, it's a smaller ball, but you've got to be so athletic as a handball goalkeeper, because you've literally just got to throw your body in the way of the ball and stuff. And he's seen that transfer across when he was playing in the Premier League.
Yeah.
So I think you can progress a lot quicker by starting off in different either sports or variations of the sport like futsal.
100%. What do you think the standards like in America compared to Brazil? Do you know, even because obviously you played college football, didn't you? Did you go to college in America?
Yeah.
So I mean, the standard for me is so different than anywhere. I think everywhere you go, the standard's different, but obviously Brazil and America are completely different. But same as England. But what do you think the big standard is difference from Brazil than anyone?
I think, like, for me, what I've seen, in Brazil, as well as in England, your dream is to be a soccer player. You see those guys, and since early age, you're trying to get there. And when you're 11 years old, 13, 15, you're always like, oh, it's the next step. So the kids start basically looking up to those guys and trying to. Whereas in the US, it's a sport, it's another sport. And most of the time you ask kids like, oh, who's your favorite player? They don't know. So, they don't really have that, not saying that all kids, but, most of the kids.
I can definitely agree on that. Some of the kids barely know who Messi is, Ronaldo. They're like, who's that? I'm like, they didn't know who he was. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a different world there. Like,
yeah. So, for me, and because you're so used to playing, you play outside, you're playing all the time, and you're competitive, and soccer for you, it's important. So when I came to the States, first I'm on a scholarship, so I have to deliver, because I don't want to lose my scholarship. Plus, that's the chance, if I do well, I can get more scholarship, I can get to play, in the summer, and a whole bunch of opportunities will appear if I deliver and I do my job. So and you got guys on my team that were Americans that they're not even on scholarship, so for them it's just like, it's whatever. So that was my reality where I was, but the standard here, I wouldn't say it's like it's terrible, because you have so many foreigners that come, and they bring their experience from other countries. But for me, the big difference, especially being a defender, I would like be exhausted at the end of every single game, even if my team beat the other team like 5-0, because the game is so direct, and like, from what I could experience, there's no that, side to side touch, keeping the ball, if this side it's closed, we're going to go back around.
Just very direct.
They attack, and it's hard for me, the concept, in soccer, every single ball that they went forward was a finish. It wasn't like, oh, we came back around. It's always like, it's gotta be, forward. You get quick touches in the back, boom, long. Defender had to turn, and go get that ball, win it back, pass to my team. And then my team wasn't, like forward wasn't like the greatest. So, that ball, we do our job in the back, pass it forward, and then immediately
comes straight back at you.
So, but yeah, though. So to mention, I grew up in Brazil, so soccer there, very technical. It was hard to defend people because, you see the quality, you see that passing, the guy going through the lines. And when I came to the States, what I noticed was, strong players, fast players, and a very direct game, where there's not really that passing combination. Is just like pass down the line, hit the byline, pass it in, somebody tries to score, or this guy just runs and just I can even mention a situation where I saw this one player, and I saw the way he looked. I saw he was like massive, but I saw first touch, I was like, okay, that's gonna be easy. Got this. After I saw his first touch, I was like, oh, this is gonna be a breeze. Man, his team knew how to play with him, just long balls. But at the time, my coach didn't really recognize what was happening, so they told us to like, oh, bring the line up. So then we push them back, and there's no space. I was like, push the line, So that made our field bigger. So they were playing ball in behind our back. And then this kid could he's like, I don't know.
That's a field day. It's a field day.
Usain Bolt wannabe. And then he was just like getting the balls. And I mean, even with a very poor touch, he scored 3 goals on us. I'm like, man. And that was for me, that was like, okay, this is American soccer right here.
It's as mentioned at the start, it's more about like the all-round athlete rather than the actual skill. So I think the MLS is pretty new, isn't it? So I think soccer as a whole is pretty new to the States, isn't it?
Yeah, I think MLS started. Actual MLS was like either 2000, 2001.
Yeah.
It was around that time that they started.
Yeah, it's a pretty new league. But before what you were saying though, obviously, like I did a couple of summers there, but I even played with a varsity high school team, and these kids were 16, and like you say, mate, they're just physically just quick. They're all just quick. Every single one of them's quick. The defender's quick, but like you said, they couldn't work as a team. The passing was just like no combinations. They just put a pass, they'll be away. But obviously, if you had a team who could play it together, they would beat average American teams. But individually great, but not as a team. That was my opinion on American players. But like you say, just physically a fast game.
And then when you see kids and when you coach them and you see kids that have those skills that they use in the game, you see the difference that they make in the game. The parents, you can see the kid, if you're there in South America, Europe, if the kid that, did something that was like pretty, that's a nice skill, people would be like, oh, nice, but, A, B, C, D can do that as well. But here, because it's so not common, when that happens, it's like, oh,
So, they just have to.
I think everything's exaggerated as well over there, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's like, oh,
sick goal, man.
Yeah.
So what, in terms of like the physical, like, because I'm a personal trainer, so like I'm sort of interested in the sort of physical side of it. Obviously, you've mentioned the physicality of the US game, but what's the physicality side of things like in Brazil?
So, and that's one thing that I try to implement with my players, that here, man, and I started to notice even more, is like coordination, and how to properly use move in a coordinated way. In Brazil, since you're very, very young, you start doing knee over the cone, and zigzags and in and out of flags, and those kind of things that are basically kids play, hopscotch, stuff like that. That here they don't do it. You know, I get players in high school that, you know, actually that was very recent. I was doing like a private session, and then, you know, we're doing coordinated stuff, and the kids were a little rusty and just kind of like struggling a little bit, which, you know, by high school age, you expect them to, you know, this is like going to be something that's like natural.
Bread and butter.
And then I was like, you know, and that was before we actually played with the ball. It's like, maybe those kids are going to need a lot of work, especially with the ball, because if, you know, the coordinative stuff, they're struggling a little bit. But then by the time that we started playing with the ball, you know, the kids, you know, kind of like loosen up, and I was like, oh, you got, you know, you got moves, you can move. So in Brazil, I would say we do a lot of that, you know, like those, you know,
coordination, agility stuff, and stuff like that.
Especially like the more old school type of, you know, coaches, they focus on that, you know, those little things, you know, that will build up. And then, but also you get those clubs, you know, the bigger clubs that have, you know, they hit the gym earlier. And then when I was there, I experienced that a little bit already. And I would have friends my age that were like 16, 17, 18 that had like 1, 2 knee surgeries, you know, because the load of work, you know, they start so young, you know, because you're looking to go pro at 16, 17. So you got to be strong. And so you start, you know, lifting weights at 13, 14, you know, and by the time you're 15, you're doing like, you know, more than you should. So you said a lot of young players that are coming from, you know, those youth teams already, you know, different injuries, you know, like, you know, different like back problems and stuff like that. Because, you know, there's not a responsible way to do that.
We were just saying last week on our podcast about growth and maturation. Obviously, like you say, kids, players who are 15, 14, train early, again, are damaging their bodies and getting surgery when realistically, I know that obviously trying to push their bodies and be ahead of the curve, but there's a time and place for.
I mean, a muscle group will grow whether you're 13 or whether you're, you know, 30. But it's the joints, it's the ligaments, it's the tendons, it's everything around the muscle group, which can cause major injury, which is probably going to be more detrimental to someone's career than what not being as strong as someone else might would. You know, like if someone gets injured, that's it. Whereas you can develop strength over time. You know, a lot of kids or teenagers try and rush it, and that's where these injuries come into play.
Yeah.
And was that in Brazil, or was that in America, where you were finding that they were hitting the gym too early?
So that was in Brazil, actually.
Yeah.
You know, I would see clubs that would go way too early. And it was mostly the bigger clubs because, you know, they have those facilities, you know, and they, you know, players go to the gym, then they go to the field to play. And then also, I never had anything in Brazil, but then the other side of that, it's, you know, in the States, I don't know if you guys are really familiar, but the schedule for college, it's insane. Like you play 18, my league was 18 games in about like 2.5 months. So it's just like, sometimes you would get games on Thursday, Sunday, and Tuesday. So that's a
lot of games.
Yeah, you got 3 games in, you know, 5 days. And, you know, and also the league here, college league, you have, I believe it's like unlimited subs. Yeah. So, for example, the forward, the midfielder, because you have more of those guys in the roster, and, you know, they go fast, and then they come out to breathe, you know. And then the defenders, it's a whole different story, because, you know, if you mess with, you know, the defense, that can just, like, you know, you can you know, give out goals and stuff like that. So me as a defender, most of the games I'll play 90 minutes, you know. That means that in 5 days I'm playing, you know, 90. So, you know, and, you know,
and then it just repeats the next week, is it?
Yeah. And because of that happening so often, my second season in the States, I ended up having like an ACL rupture. So, you know, and that was for sure because of exhaustion, because you're playing so often. There's no time in between. The preparation is not adequate. So so there's the both side of things, too early and also too much, too frequent. So
yeah, definitely.
There's got to be a balance, and you'd be able to tell me, that the exact aspects of it.
Yeah,
I believe.
Well, I mean, obviously at the minute, even the Premier League teams are playing 3 times a week, and you're seeing a lot of injuries that you wouldn't normally see, and it's because of that recovery time in between. It's a massive importance. I mean, unless you've got the facilities to be, having ice baths and, like you've got sports scientists there sorting out your nutrition and everything else, then it's going to be tough to recover within a day. So it is massively important. Rest. It's one big thing that everyone sort of misses out in with regards to fitness training, sport, everything is sleep, is recovery.
Yeah, 100%.
Rest. I find myself telling some of my clients that if you want to grow muscle, sleep more. Because of the massive benefit that your body's optimal recovery is when you're asleep. So your growth hormone, your testosterone's at its highest while you're asleep. And people think it's mad that I'm telling them that that's part of my job, is to tell them when to go to sleep and when to wake up. But it's a massive part of it. If you're not getting that recovery in, you will get injured. You're right.
Yeah.
Right.
But in terms of your coaching, what would you say is because obviously you've coached you played or coached in 2 different countries. So what's the positives you can take out of each sort of country, so the US and Brazil, in terms of development as a 16-year-old player? So what was the good points from the Brazil game, the game in Brazil, and then what have you got from America? How can we combine the two into giving sort of like 3-4 top tips on improving your game as a 16-year-old footballer?
Man, if I could combine Brazilian technique with American athleticism, I would have like a top player, but that's in a perfect world. But I mean, the players in Brazil, what I really like about Brazilian players is that you adapt so fast. And that's that we touched that point, that you're playing on the street, so there's a pothole here, there's the curb here, so you gotta find different ways, and that only comes with experience. What I would tell my players, if not 16 but a little bit younger, I'll tell them, look, just go play outside, just go have fun with your friends, because that is important. And not only the soccer aspect, because when you're playing outside, if there's a fight, there's something happens, you got to handle it on the spot, and heads up, continues the game, so, and that's kind of like how life happens. You're not going to have somebody supervising you all the time and telling you what to do.
Not wrapped in a bubble.
yeah so
exactly.
I would say that exposure to different things that you leave on the streets in Brazil helps you to become like a all-around player.
So technique and mentality.
Because and one of the things too, that in America, because life conditions are very good here, especially compared to some areas outside of the country. People don't struggle, so for example, soccer, for a lot of kids there, including myself, was like, that's my way out, of this situation. Not saying that my situation was bad, but like, I'm looking to help my parents to retire, or, I'm looking to give them like a nice house, and stuff like that. In the States, those cases are rare, and if you're not really trying to change, from worst to best, there's not really like a lot of like motivation besides like following your dreams. So I think like for a 16-year-old, my advice would be you always have to, I always tell my players to have like somebody to look up to. That's like key, and it doesn't matter with your background. You can be, living in the suburbs, like in a mansion, or you can be living in like in the inner city, and you don't have, you're not sure if you're going to have something to eat tomorrow. If you have somebody that you can look up to, that's going to push you. And there are players in Brazil that came from nothing. There are players like Kaká that his parents were really well off, and
what wasn't Jesus as well? He wasn't from the. I don't think Jesus was from the richest of background, was he? Gabriel Jesus from Man City.
He was from like he didn't have much.
No. Yeah, there's pictures of him actually clean streets and stuff. He from a humble background, pretty much.
Yeah. Him, Richarlison for Everton. So
Everton, but no, that definitely I can see the streets is definitely a place where you mold as a person. Definitely, like you say, we mentioned.
We were saying, weren't you, like, to change, in order to change or to become. So, for example, we use sort of my example of like to change your body. You've got to put your body under stress. So you've got to push through that stress and push through that pain, and then force your body to adapt. So sort of the same thing with that, as he said, as it's quite interesting that you mentioned. Actually, it helps like strengthen your mind a little bit. In that, like, when these things do happen, say like a fight kicks off on the street or something, you've got to deal with it, then play on. Is that you're essentially forcing your mind to adapt. Again, you just like, you're pushing that progress from being under struggle and being under stress.
Of course. Going back to the point, Pedro, obviously, I know your dad was a professional player. What was it like growing up with a dad as a professional player? Because I mean, I haven't got many mates who got professional players as dads, and it's quite interesting to see that. What, did you feel pressure growing up, or did you kind of embrace that your dad was a professional player and you learned off your dad? How did you find it growing up when you're young?
Man, when you're a kid, you're normally like stubborn, and you're like, you think you know better. So with my dad, I mean, I always listened to him, but I always had that, I got this kind of thing. Not kind of recognizing, this dude play, the real deal, and he knows what he's talking about. But my dad was all like, I mean, the guy's like amazing. He always like, he never put that pressure. Like, look, you got to be a soccer player. That's, that's all you're gonna, you'd be like, no, if you want to do it, let's go. If you want to go here and there, I'll take you.
That's good.
He was never also that guy that was like, oh, I know, I can use, call this and this guy. He's like, no, I know this guy. I'm gonna talk to him. Maybe you can set up like a tryout or something. But never like, oh, you're gonna play here because you're my son. That is very good, because that could be very just, I've had problems with that before, where I'll be in a club that I got boys saying like, oh, you're only here because of your dad.
No.
So when I'm really working here to to push myself and get better. So I've had that before, but it wasn't really a problem. But and one thing that, and it's funny because now that I'm coaching, and I tell him like, and I mentioned a couple of times like, Dad, I'm sorry, because there's this exactly same, this kid acts exactly like I used to when you were coaching me, so I'm sorry for being a pain to you. But growing up with him, actually now I never really took advantage of like being like a dad that's being involved with that, because it's just, he was so cool about it, and so like humble.
It's just normal to you.
So it was just like I would see some players, and just he would mention who they were, and I was like, oh, okay, but now I can actually take more advantage of it from the live things that I'm doing.
Yeah, mate, I've seen them. They're really good. They're really good. Like, you've got so many players. You could have a starting 11 before the play.
It all came, so easily through, like, through him. Just I'm gonna give him your phone number and start conversations, and I'm kind of trying to use it as a platform for these guys to share their experiences. Because like I said, I never played anywhere. I never went pro. I want make sure that these guys have the spotlights. So but definitely the experience of having like a professional soccer player in your house, it's very positive, you know, like, so, and like I said, it comes back to having somebody that you look up to, you know. My dad, of course, alongside, you know, Ronaldo, you know, Rivaldo, my dad was one guy that I was like always looking up to. So
you
know,
role model,
having
for
that
sure.
figure.
Yeah, definitely. Is any questions you've got us to about, obviously, because we're from England, so it's different to Brazil. Is there any questions you have to us about anything, or?
So it was never that clear to me how like the divisioning for you guys works, because, you know, I know that you guys have like, I don't know, 7, 8 different divisions. How does that work for you guys?
What, as a professional? Do you mean the professional rankings?
Yeah, or like Division 1 to like Premier League. It's the Division 1.
Sorry, the National League, they're pro, right? So once you get to the National League, you go. So you're then a professional and you get paid full time. So you go National League, League 1, League 2, Championship, and then Premier League. But then once you get below the National League, it's split between North and South, and they're most, like, you might get one player that's a pro in each club or something like that, but most of them are semi-pro. So they'll have other jobs and stuff alongside it.
Yeah.
So you've got National League North, National League South. Then within each National League North and South, you've got like divisions below that. So like they're all semi-pro, where you've got like what's called the Northern League around here. So you've got Northern League I think it's Premier, and then Northern League 1, and then Northern League 2, and they're all semi-pro. And then after that, you've then got the Alliance, which is all amateur, which goes down about 8 divisions as well. So you've got like, you've got like, say you're at the bottom of the Alliance League. You've got then, say, like 7 leagues to climb to get to a semi-pro. Then you've got 6 to climb to get to professional, and then you've got 4 to climb to get to the Premier League, or 5 to climb. So it's quite a.
There's so many.
Quite a road.
There's so many leagues.
It's quite a hike.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of leagues, and there's so many semi-pro teams in a bracket, and then you have, obviously, above the semi-pros, obviously you have your Northern conferences and stuff like that. So it's
well, even in the amateur game, there's people getting paid. So at the top of your what's called the Alliance, at the top, it's in the top, because they're all trying to basically, to get into the Northern League, which is your semi-pro league, you've got to have a football ground, like with
FA charter, basically.
No, like a small stadium, what we call like just a ground. You've got to have like that rather than just a pitch. So you've got to have like FA chartered like ground. Basically, all of them teams they're all good enough to get into, like, there's 3-4 teams in the top amateur league which are good enough, but they haven't got the ground yet. So some of them might just be getting funded, or they might be waiting for funding, or they might not have the funding. But they've still got people that go and watch them religiously, and they still make a little bit of money, so they still pay some of their players. It's mental. Okay. Like, there was someone told us that Pascal, you might not know, do you remember Pascal Chimbonda? He played for Wigan. He ended up playing for like an amateur team round.
He played for Spurs. He played for Spurs as well. He played for Tottenham Hotspur.
He played for Spurs, aye. And then he just went down to an amateur league.
Did he play
to kill him off, aye.
But yeah, no,
apparently
he did. It's true, man. It's true.
So there's still amateurs getting paid.
Okay, makes sense.
Around here,
man. One of my favorite things to watch are the Sunday League videos. Like the highlights. Man, they're normally from England.
That's a different thing altogether. Because all these Saturday players, they'll play well. They'll play, they'll have a good Friday night and that, get a good night's kip, and you'll see like a tough but respectful-ish game, and then it gets to the Sunday and they've all been out after the Saturday night and they're all still over as fuck, like being sick on the sideline and that.
Yeah, those are my favorite videos.
Guys, thanks for listening. It's been good to chat to you, Pedro. Make sure you follow us on.
Yep, social media, YouTube, Spotify, it's all on there. Again, Pedro's link in bio will be linked below. His Instagram, obviously his live podcast he does himself. And take care, guys.